I can't hear that. There's no sound to that.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started shortly. We're going to let our intro slides run through for a couple more seconds. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited that you are joining us today for a conversation with Steve McCutchen. My name is Crystal Tribbetts. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm speaking to you today from the campus of UC Irvine, which sits on the territories of the Ahachman and Tongva peoples, past, present, and future. At UCI, I serve as the curator for Orange County Regional History, and I'm also a member of the Black Panther Party Oakland Community School Community Archives, Activism, and Storytelling Research Cluster team. The BPOCS Research Cluster was formed in spring 2021 to advance research, teaching, and learning about the Black Panther Party's survival programs through public programs, exhibitions, community archives, and digital project development towards the release of a publication and a film documentary about the Oakland Community School. To support this mission, to date, the Research Cluster has hired 14 UCI graduate and undergraduate students, as well as trained and directed the archival work of an additional 10 UCI undergraduate interns in classroom settings and internships. Other members of the BP OCS team are Tatiana Bryant, Professor Disha Deshawn, Angela LeBlanc Ernest, who is the director of the OCS project, Professor Rasul Miller, and Professor Judy Wu. In the interest of time, I won't be able to offer in-depth biographies for this amazing group, but I do encourage you to visit the OCS project website page, and I'll drop that in the chat shortly. Thanks to the work of students, leadership team, and sponsors who include the OCS project, UCI Community Center, and UCI Libraries, the Research Cluster has embarked on a number of exciting initiatives, including summer and academic year internships. In their own words, the OCS Project podcast, Art, Power, Community, a student curated traveling exhibit, panel presentations, and film and media studies course collaborations. Now that you know a bit more about the BPOCS Research Cluster, we should get started. We are using a webinar format today for our conversation, and it will feature Steve, who will, and Angela will facilitate our conversation. The conversation will be followed by a Q&A with the audience. Please feel free to put your questions into the Q&A feature of Zoom throughout the program. And so now I'm going to turn things over to Angela to introduce our speaker for this afternoon.
Thank you, Crystal. Good afternoon, everyone. Today it is my absolute honor to introduce Steve McCutchen. I've known Steve since 1998 when he was a member of the Black Panther Party Research Project Summer Internship Program at Stanford University when I directed it there. Steve, whose pen name is Lil Masai, was an early member of the Baltimore chapter of the BPP, where he joined in 1968. During those early years, he was also assigned to Philadelphia, New York, and New Haven. In 1972, Steve arrived in Oakland along with other party members from chapters around the country. In 1973, he was assigned to the Intercommunal Youth Institute, later renamed the Oakland Community School, where he taught math and physical education. In 1974, Steve launched the martial arts program for youth and adults housed at the Oakland Community Learning Center. After the BPP, Steve taught math and then ethnic studies with the Oakland Unified School District. He is an accomplished spoken word performer, having been a member of the Oakland Writers Guild and International Black Writers and Artists Bay Area Collective. In 2008, his book, We Were Free for a While, back-to-back in the Black Panther Party was published. He currently is a member of the Black Organizing Project based in Oakland and Contra Costa County, and now stands side by side with former BPP members and community activists as part of the Black Panther Party Alumni Legacy Network. Steve, welcome to the Black Panther OCS Research Cluster Summer Speaker Series. Thank you for sharing space with us today.
Right. Thank you, Angela, and thank you very much to all of you, to all of your interns, and to all of the audience that will be participating in this conversation and discussion. And let's see if I can provide some food for thought, and we can share a few things along this time. So let me go back to the beginning, since I have a little time to bring things into focus. As Angela pointed out, I'm currently one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party Alumni Legacy Network, which grew from former members of the Black Panther Party because we had a concern about maintaining and uplifting the legacy and history of the Black Panther Party. Currently, one of our initiatives focuses on education, and we are in the process of collaborating with Oakland native and National Basketball Association head coach, Jason Kidd. And we are working towards building a new complex in West Oakland, which will provide the services similar to, but updated based on the Oakland Community School model and the Oakland Community Learning Center model. This complex in West Oakland, it will house not only an academic facility, but a health facility as well as a youth sports complex. That's on the drawing boards now with, again, Jason Kidd from the NBA and Oakland native, along with other community activists and those involved in seeing that something new comes to the environment in West Oakland to continue along the tradition and the legacy of the Black Panther Party. So with that being said, let me go back into some of the things that brought me to where we are today. My first day of school began in 1956 when my mother enrolled me in the first grade in Baltimore City Schools. That day, she had prepared for me a list of the numbers from 1 to 10, from 1 to 20, had written them out, and she had written out the alphabets, all caps and lower caps. She had put those on 2 cards for me and told me to carry those in my pocket. At that time, I had no idea I was going to be in school and what the school process involved. All that my mother told me, all the mom told me then was that you're going to be in school for 12 years. At that time, I thought I'm going to be away from school away from home for 12 years. She said, no, you'll go to school every day, come home, but you'll be going to school for 12 years. So that was my first introduction there in the first grade. Going through elementary school, 2nd grade, I became accustomed to and interested in math, arithmetic primarily, and then learning to read, beginning the reading experience, particularly spelling, as that was one of the emphasis there in elementary school. So those were 2 of the academic areas that I wanted to do as much as I could because I had an interest in those areas. By the 4th grade, I developed an interest in sports, particularly in football. So going to school and my newly developing sports interests, those were my growing companions during those elementary school years. By the time I arrived at the 6th grade and was being prepared to enter the 7th grade, which would be junior high school back then during that period, we were getting some of the information that would prepare us to go on to that intermediate school level. Mrs. Taylor was our 6th grade teacher then. And during that school year in particular, I noticed that there was a pecking order of sorts among some students, particularly those who came from the same neighborhoods. A bulk of the students during that time came from the same neighborhood. And there were a few of us who came from different neighborhoods that were in close proximity to the elementary school at that time. And I saw this in the classroom, but it really had no significance in terms of what I was doing in class and what was to await me coming down the road. At the end of the 6th grade, with our final report cards, at the bottom of each of the report card, it was labeled what course you would be placed in junior high school for grades 7, 8, and 9. My report card read enrichment. That would be the course that I would enter going into Lamel Junior High School for the next 3 years. And I asked some of the other students what curriculum, what course were they in, and most of us were in enrichment program. A few were in regular program. That didn't weigh too much on me then, except that we were told that you would have classes that other students at school would be offered. And most of the population at that school, they decided to go to Garrison Junior High School, which was closer to them. Because of my proximity to the new elementary, to the new junior high school, Lamel Junior High School, which was right up the hill from PS 60 where I was attending, I went to Lamel Junior High School. And only 2 of us from that 6th grade class did attend Lamel, and the other bulk of the class attended Garrison Junior High School during that period of time. In the 7th grade, my homeroom teacher was Ms. Ann Emery. She was a science teacher. And she was the homeroom teacher for us in the 7th and 8th grade. It was there that my interest in science and my focus in learning actually started to develop. I became focused in learning and not going from grade to grade, year to year, just to get to summer vacation. At the end of the first semester in 7th grade, Ms. Emery had called my parents and let them know that I had made the honor roll. She said that I had the skills to maintain my interest in science, if that's what I intended to do, and to continue learning if I chose something else to do after junior high school or maybe after high school. Ms. Emery encouraged our entire class. She was able to keep us together for 2 years, 7th and 8th grade. And my learning there, my interest in science and in the ongoing educational process itself, it began to expand. It was an exponential leap almost from where I had been in elementary school to that period of time. Because of my interest in science and one other of my classmates, his was in engineering, mine was in science, we selected Baltimore Polytechnic High School to attend following junior high school. Poly was one of the prestigious high schools at that time in terms of secondary education. It was an all-boys high school, and it was, in fact, the predecessor to today's STEM schools for science, technology, engineering, and math. Because the focus there at the high schools was on those areas, science and engineering and math. So we were the only 2, my classmate George Burse and I, we were the only 2 to attend that particular high school at the end of the 9th grade. At Lamel Junior High School, basically, I was a big fish in a small pond, academically and athletically. When I got to Poly, I saw that there were students coming from other counties around Baltimore and from other junior high schools around Baltimore. And they were bringing the benefits of what they had learned in these schools. Even though Lamel Junior High School and the middle school, the junior high school component of Baltimore City was a pretty solid department at that time. There were students there I encountered who, coming in at the 10th grade, they appeared to have far more skills than I had, far more understanding. But it wasn't an arrogance. It wasn't an arrogance. It was the skills they were bringing into that curriculum, into that environment. They seemed to somewhat overshadow me. But I was confident through those years. And so I went on to succeed 10th grade, 11th grade. Between that 10th and 11th grade period, I was paying more attention to the civil rights movement, starting to focus on the issues that were emanating from the civil rights movement. Also, I was paying more attention to the growing conflict in Vietnam, the Vietnam War. Those 2 issues there were becoming more and more of a concern to me as I was being reminded on and off that if I didn't go to college, there was a good chance I was going to be drafted for Vietnam. That began to take away from the glamour and the idealism that I had about just continue sailing on through school, going to college, and then getting on down the road with the interest that I had at that point in science and in math. By the 12th grade, as I had interest from two universities, Syracuse and Northwestern, based on my academic performances in the 10th and 11th grade, I believe that there may be an opportunity, a door opening for me to get a scholarship. By the end of the 12th grade, by time I found that I was hitting a wall in math and in science, in my sciences. Not only did I not apply to college, but I also paid more attention again to the civil rights movement and the persons who were involved with that and the activities around that, and to the encroaching age limit of 18, where I would be eligible for the military draft. I finished high school in 1967. I got out the door. That's all I was concerned with then, because of the shadow, again, of Vietnam following me. That October, I registered for the draft, 1967, as I turned 18. And with the possibility of going to college full-time, with that opportunity slipping away or having slipped away since I didn't follow up on my end, I became a target then for whatever occurred as far as my educational status or the possibility of military induction. When my draft status came back, I was classified as 1A, which meant that I was prime material to be drafted. I was at the top of the list for each of the areas to be drafted. And this created a panic mode in me. And I was looking for a way to avoid the draft and at the same time, see if I could get into a college so that I could somehow obtain a student deferment and avoid the draft. This is where I came into contact with the Black Panther Party. After reading their 10-point program and platform, the early 10-point program and platform, point number 7 of their program called for all Black men to be exempt from military service. That was the hook that brought me through the door of the fledgling Baltimore chapter of the Black Panther Party. I became a member of that early chapter, informed them that because of my draft status, that's one thing that I was interested in, the organization, and my growing awareness in the civil rights movement and the struggle of Black and poor people in relation to their historical treatment here in America. At that point, that appeared to be the salvation in the course that I would take. I had no idea at that time of the scope of the Black Panther Party, nor where my educational opportunities would open, or if they ever would open up again. So the first 4 years of my involvement with the Black Panther Party, from 68 to 72, that was up and down the East Coast, primarily in Baltimore, either teaching political education classes or coordinating our Ministry of Information. 1972, when I was called out to Oakland, along with other members of chapters from around the country, arrived here, and as I worked into the membership of the party, into the new environment of the Black Panther Party and the national membership coming together. There was a new environment, there was a new support element here. Again, I informed the coordinators who I was responsible to about my situation. They said, we'll look into it and to go on about my tasks and responsibilities. By the end of 1972, 1973, the draft issue had been resolved. I was permanently disqualified from military service, so I had that off my head. The summer of 1972, 1973, John Seal approached me and asked me to begin working on the Oakland Community Learning Center facility, or the Intercommunal Youth Institute facility, because the school was going to relocate there. The Intercommunal Youth Institute was going to relocate in East Oakland. After working on this project of preparing the school along with other members of the party, I was informed that I would be assigned to the staff of the Intercommunal Youth Institute, the Oakland Community School. The first year, I was assigned there along with the teaching staff, but I was assigned as a floater because most of the staff that was already in place there, they had been working with the earlier versions of the Intercommunal Youth Institute while we were located on 62nd Street and 61st Street in North Oakland. So I floated from class to class that first year when Brenda Hyson Day was the initial coordinator of the new institute. The second year, 1974, Erica Huggins replaced Brenda Bay as the coordinator and doing our initial staff meetings during the summer. First, I was asked to teach science, but I wanted to teach science. Said I could, but there were openings because we had party members leaving to teach math to our school-age children. I said, if I can, I'd rather have that. So there I began my placement with a homeroom of students. First year, I had all boys in my class, and these were school-age children, ages 7 and 8, which correspond to our second and third graders in public schools. This year, the math, I was basically teaching as I had been taught from the academic perspective, but I taught through the lens of Black Panther Party principles that we wanted to create an environment within the classrooms and within the school where the teacher, students, and the teachers could interact, to share ideas, to share understandings so that not only they will grow in their learning, but the teachers, the staff themselves will grow also in that way, be able to prepare not only lessons, but broader visions of how learning could take place. Learning could take place not from just narrowly teacher down to student, but an interconnection, a cross connection between teachers and students. So this began to broaden my understanding of teaching and my range in terms of being able to reach students. And in turn, this gave me more tools, gave me more food for thought in terms of preparing lesson plans and being able to act and interact with students as they themselves participated in their own learning. The math program was able to not only reinforce my math skills, but those skills that were needed to understand the different types of learning styles from student to student, year to year. Same thing in the physical education, with the physical education classes. I learned to be able to understand that different children had different physical skills, that they learned at different times, at different levels. So in teaching physical education, instead of everybody doing the same thing at the same level of skill, at the same level of proficiency, I understood that there will be those who were going to perform different. And I carried that over also when I began teaching with the martial arts program. I began learning these different levels of skills. These different methods of learning were applicable to each and every student. And again, that broadened the window of my understanding as to how I could improve my teaching and improve their ability to effectively learn from what I was bringing and to learn among themselves. So from 1973 until 1980, I was able to grow as a learner. I believe I grew as I learned and as I taught. Once I arrived at the Oakland Unified School District, that environment there, it was different. I expected that it wouldn't be the open, interconnected atmosphere that we had at the Oakland Community School. Curriculum was there. Teachers were assigned to groups of students, and we were to move through the curriculum from the beginning of the school year towards the end of the school year. And the students that were targeted for passing were passed, and those who did not meet the requirements were either given opportunity for summer school or to repeat the grade. That initial experience, which I'm glad at the early days, I did not have to participate in the decision to move students on or not. As I came into the school district as an intervention teacher, and my recommendations were passed on to the primary class teachers as to success of each of the students in the school grades. But it did show a lot in terms of the differences between the Oakland Community School philosophy and movement strategy and in the public school systems at the public school level. And it also gave me insight in terms of some of the direction at the university levels into mainstream society. And I think I'm out of time.
It's not out of time, we're just transitioning. If there are any other things that you wanted to share that come up during the conversation, the Q&A session, that's fine. Just go ahead and insert it. Thank you for talking to us about your early years of education. That's one of the things that with the internship program every summer, we always spend time reflecting on our own educational experience, because since the focus is on OCS and recovering the history and thinking through the pedagogy, it always presents almost a stark contrast for the students when they realize the different way that students at OCS were taught. And one of the things that they always want to know is whether you feel that what the strategies you used at OCS are applicable to public school systems. So you're our first guest who taught at OCS and then went on to teach in the public school system. There were years in between, but could you spend a couple minutes talking to us about whether you feel there are elements of OCS's teaching strategy and approach that can be applied to education today?
All right, thanks for the question, Angela. And first of all, definitely the strategies can be approached, but it depends on the individual educator. Educators may go through similar training and get similar learnings, teachings, and whatever, but it comes down to their individual approach, subject to subject, class to class. I found over the years that some teachers had the ability, the technical ability and knowledge of their command of their topics, of their subject, but had no ability to transfer that knowledge and skill to groups of students or individuals. They were able to pass on the information as though they were lecturing and expected students to comprehend new topics, new ideas, maybe similar to the way that they did. And I saw that this was not appropriate in terms of learning. Learning has to be a two-way street. It has to be communication between teacher and student, and between the methods of teaching of the student and the methods of learning of those students. That the teacher cannot expect students to learn regardless of what course of study that may be presented. Students have to learn at their particular level. The teacher has to reach these students at their level in order to a point where they understand a little more or exponentially more as they go along. So the teacher has to constantly be able to readjust to the peaks, plateaus, and valleys of students as they move along through the course of any given subject year.
You mentioned levels a few times during your presentation, and you just reiterated it. One of the features of Oakland Community Schools that they didn't have grades, they had levels. And one of our interns found that extremely interesting and had a question. And so I'll set it up and then ask the question. In OCS, students were placed into levels instead of grades of the traditional schooling system. According to some studies, math often is a trap for disadvantaged students once tracked, for example, remedial, non-honors, honors, AP. Once they're tracked as behind, they often can't ever catch up. The question is, do you feel that OCS did things differently, be it in math or other subjects, with the concept of levels?
First of all, the levels were the initial development of students. Our primary skills children, those 3.5 to 5 were level 1. Beginning school age children, ages maybe 5.5 to 7 were maybe level 2. Level 3 were our intermediate students, maybe third and fourth graders, and then maybe level 4 would be our 5th and 6th graders. That was to give us some idea of the student body that we had. But to organize the students into learning areas based on their age and their abilities, students were in groups. Our youngest students, our pre-K students, were in groups, maybe A, B, and C. These were the students where my son and daughter were in when they began school at the Oakland Community School. So that was the pre-K level, groups maybe A, B, and C. The next group level, school age, which were tantamount to maybe kindergarten. These may be groups D, D, E, and F, depending on the number of students we had and the age range. We looked at skill, but normally at those younger ages there, we didn't find any outliers in terms of groups of students lagging behind in skills. As far as tracking students there, the testing along the line was to measure comprehension and ability to take those skills and articulate and act on them at their own level of understanding. So of course, there were no grades A, B, C, D through the line, which were recorded on our report cards or the reports that we sent home to parents. Students were given a marking based on whether they had been introduced to the topic, whether they had mastered the topic, or they had not been introduced. So that was basically how we were able to look at students there so that we could determine what students had not been introduced to a topic, which students had been introduced, but they had not attained the proficiency where they were comfortable in understanding what they were being involved in with the class. And then the students who had mastered skills in their particular age groups, they were normally grouped together that following year. So, but when it came to that period of time when they were entering the sixth grade, going to the sixth grade, preparing to go into middle school, because of our records, we were able to translate our grading system into the public school grading system, A, B, C, D, in terms of where they would fall in line in accordance with the open public schools.
Thank you for that, Steve. I want to remind the audience that there is Q&A for you. This is your time. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop it in the Q&A link, and Kay will curate those. While we wait for a question, I'm going to go ahead and ask you another question, Steve. The one thing that you haven't talked about is martial arts. And my question for you, or ask, is that you talk about the connection for you between martial arts and education, and why you decided to create a martial arts program that it wasn't just for the students, it was also for the community. But how did that fit for you as a part of your toolkit?
Again, when I began the martial arts program, it wasn't in a vacuum by myself. Some of the teens from the neighborhood who would come through the Oakland Community School and the Oakland Community Learning Center had observed the elementary school classes with the Oakland Community School students. And they asked if they could learn martial arts also. So that was the seed there. So I said, let me talk to the coordinator then of the programs department and see what can be done. Once I explained the idea and then given a written outline of how the program will proceed, he said, oh, if you can get an orientation class together, and if you have enough interest, then we can proceed from there. The first orientation class was maybe 50, 60 students. And from there, just seeing that outpouring of young people, that gave me the go-ahead, the green light to begin teaching martial arts. And initially, I taught as I had learned martial arts, which I found really did not correspond to, again, the student population that I had, because I had some students who, because of the Bruce Lee era and everything, said, I've already seen this, I've already done this here. And I would try to explain to them, we're trying to go through this step by step. So with my background being in both Taekwondo and JKD, which was the method of martial arts, which Bruce Lee performed, studied, and performed it for the movie audience. I began my classes with Taekwondo, and then I would phase that into applications from JKD. And this not only gave me the ability and the arena to introduce traditional martial arts, teach traditional martial arts, but to also teach the non-traditional aspects of JKD so that I could maintain interest from those students who were interested just in classical martial arts and those who were interested in the more open method of JKD. And eventually this turned the corner and brought students in who had prior martial arts experience and wanted to participate in the JKD aspect, but they were interested in tournament competition also. So with the emphasis beginning to shift to students asking about tournaments, I began to include in my lesson plans preparations for teaching stick competition, teaching the techniques that will be applicable in tournament competition, and also maintaining that a movement in terms of the whole curriculum that I had outlined at that point for all of the students who were interested. And the popularity of the program grew. But the idea of the martial arts program there, it was incorporated into the values of the Black Panther Party and the Oakland Community School, as because it was based still on the models on concept of each one teach one, and that each student was an opportunity to learn from and to teach. Out of that, I recognize that I was not only a teacher, but I was a student too. And that the students themselves were not just the students, but they were also teachers also. So that became one of our ideas that we presented to the students, that the teacher is ever the student and the student is ever the teacher. So.
Thank you, Steve. I see we have a few people chiming in with Q&A, okay. So I'll transition to Kay and let her handle those.
Thank you so much, Angela.
Hello again, Kay.
Yes, hi, Steve. And one audience question we had from attendee Evelyn says, firstly, she thanks you for speaking to us today, but also adds that you spoke on the pathway of knowledge transfer as one that includes students to, and quote, learn among themselves. Do you have a story that comes to mind where you saw this concept unfold with your students?
At Carl Monk, well, at Oakland Community School, I saw it just about every day. Students who were having difficulty, especially in math, would go to one another without having to ask me, can I work with so-and-so on this project? Can we work together on this topic here? So I could see that day to day, week to week, especially with topics weren't as fluid. I'd present them as fluidly on a group basis as I would have liked to. So they would work together. Same thing in the martial arts. I would present techniques, explain the techniques, demonstrate the techniques, and we would have breakout sessions. The students work with among themselves. One student would have an understanding more so of the mechanics, another would have more so an understanding of the applications of the technique. So they could exchange among themselves, and then when we come back to group for partner practice, whatever, they were able to step by step develop their skills from one level to another. And they also were able not only to get the knowledge from observing and hearing about the particular technique, but understanding more about themselves, their own body mechanics, their own body kinesiology in terms of the technique, from the artistic point of view, and from the application point of view. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much for your very succinct answer. And on a very different topic, and I guess more returning back to your story on how you got to where you are today, A.D. Johnson is curious if you were harassed in any way by joining the Black Panthers intentionally to avoid the draft.
Yes, about the draft, 1968, I registered for the draft, October 1968. November 1968, my draft status came back 1A. So I recognized then that meant I was on the wait list. That's really what it meant to us young Black boys then. We were on the wait list, and we knew that if we were going to be drafted, that didn't mean going into boot camp in the Army and being assigned to a location domestically. It meant that we were going to be, as soon as possible, assigned to Vietnam. And for 2 years prior, I'd already told folks, I'm not going to Vietnam. I had the same position, same idea on that, as Muhammad Ali said. The Viet Cong had never called me out of my name. So I wasn't going. And even though some of my peers said that I was out of my mind, they called you, you're going. I stood implacable on that point. I wasn't going. And even though my parents had tried to put it in my mind, you got to cooperate, it still, that still didn't sit well with me. And I had already internalized the fact that whatever it took, I was not going to Vietnam.
Got it. Thank you so much. And I guess before leading into one of our final questions, how does your background and involvement in the Black Panther Party and OCS impact like what you write and what you perform? Like, how does it impact what you do in the present?
And I guess what you could say that I would take from the Black Panther Party, that learning, that additional level of learning through the Black Panther Party, because I matured from a teenager into a young adult while I was a member of the Black Panther Party. So that was a whole part of my life. That was a whole part of that. That was maybe 1/3 of my life at that time before I had resigned from the Black Panther Party. But even though I resigned from the organization, those teachings were there. The seeds of learning were there. The seeds of the learning and the application, being able to apply what I had learned. And that has been the most important thing. Taking the theory to practice and the practice back to theory so that I could synthesize ideas for my interest now in community organizing, regardless of what the area is, education, politics, medical areas, technology, even at the human level. It gave me that ability to, as Einstein had to say, find that imagination is more important than knowledge. And so I can use that knowledge there and understanding from the party even more so than what I found useful in the academic arenas. And I still tell people today that with academics at the college level and with the learnings, the potential to learn through the Black Panther Party, I would not trade the Black Panther Party, that experience, that environment, for anything.
Thank you so much. And as we near the end of our time here, as our final question, returning to your book, since we were just talking about your writing and your performance. So returning to your book, we were free for a while back to back in the Black Panther Party. We understand it's currently in the process of being reprinted. With this, are there any events or book talks or anything about your book that you might want to share with us? And feel free to add any closing remarks if you have any.
Well, the book, my book was originally published in 2008. And through the Black Panther Party Alumni Legacy Network, part of our team has redone the cover. They've re-edited the book, and I've added a foreword to it so that it kind of clears up or makes clear some of the things that the original publisher overlooked and wasn't capable of doing. So we're going to reintroduce this. It should be ready for release now with the updates, with the photos included and everything. It should be ready for release soon as we complete the negotiations with the publisher, because this had to go through another road for publication than my first print. So we're looking forward either to have initial copies available either sometime this month or sometime during the fall.
Awesome, great. Thank you so much for sharing everything and all your wisdom with us and through all your experiences. And with that, I will pass it on to our final announcements. Back to Crystal.
Thank you so much. This has been a really amazing presentation. Steve, we really extend gratitude for you spending time with us today and sharing your experiences. Kay, thank you for helping to facilitate the conversation. And Angela, of course, thank you for all you do. And of course, to the audience, thank you for attending with us. Please stay connected. There is so much more to come from the BPOCS Research Cluster, including a Summer Fellow Showcase, which will take place on August 25th at 1 p.m. and Comrade Sisters Women of the Black Panther Party book event, which is scheduled for October 18th at 6 p.m. and it will be in person at UC Irvine. So again, thank you all, and we hope to see you again soon.
And Crystal, I'm going to disconnect now and go to the other link that will put us into the chat.
Thank you, Steve.
All right. Thank all of you. Thank you, Angela, and all of you. I'll see you in the chat.